Welcome back to the M&A Zing, the weekly podcast for acquisition entrepreneurs, holdco builders and search fund investors in the UK, Europe and beyond. I'm your host, Gareth Hawkins, co-founder and CEO of BizCrunch, the AI-powered end-to-end tool suite for small business succession M&A. And today I am excited to be joined by Tonia Nagle.
Hello, nice to see you.
Tonia has a truly unique perspective on the world of acquisition entrepreneurship. She's someone who sat on both sides of the table, starting with her own startup in the 90s and then scaling at pace with global corporates like Procter & Gamble. So she understands what it takes to build something from the ground up and what it takes to operate at scale. And over the past 25 years, she's worked across an impressive range of industries, FMCG, telecoms, entertainment, leading project teams from 10 to 300 people. So that entrepreneurial grit combined with the corporate discipline has given her the ability to thrive in that messy middle and an insight into the challenges mid-sized businesses face today. Recently, as a board advisor and consultant, she's helped leadership teams of 3 to 10 million revenue businesses to sharpen their operations and unlock their growth strategies. And now, as an established business acquirer herself with 2 already under her belt, she's leading and building the Indie Rocks Group, actively buying creative agencies ready for smooth transitions, where she preserves the founders' legacies and their teams. So, Tonia, it's great to have you with us today. Hope I did you justice in the intro.
Very good. Thank you. I sound very impressive when somebody else says all that.
Oh, and your humility, is goes without saying. But it is wonderful to have you with us, and I'm really excited to be getting into what's brought you to where you are today and where you're going with the Indie Rocks Group. So you've described your career path as squiggly.
Yes.
Could you want to elaborate on that and how that journey unfolded?
Yeah, there are various phrases for this. A wonderful woman whose name I have forgotten, and I apologize ahead, wrote the squiggly career, and so I've borrowed that phrase. I've heard it called the fruit salad career as well. But I was one of those kids that didn't actually know what she wanted to do when she grew up. I had a vague idea it was something to do with business. And so after university and during that kind of final year, I just tried to get a job, any job. I ended up at Lloyd's of London. I was an underwriter and broker there beforehand. But while I had been at university and while I was there, I was always messing around in the music industry. I was putting on gigs. My sister ended up working at one of Richard Branson's labels, and she and I and a friend set up a company called iGig, which was one of the first companies doing live gigs on the internet, so webcasting at the time. And it was, that entrepreneurial side of me has always been there. And even at Lloyd's, I would find problems with something and then make a solution. And suddenly, that was, we've got a product that, differentiates us from the market. And so I've kind of learnt as I've gone, and without necessarily knowing the definition of what it was that I liked and I was good at, I've found my way through this career. And marketing for me, when I went into it, was another light bulb moment. It's like, that's that thing where you understand the consumer, the problem, everything. You create a solution and then you sell it. And that end to end really made a lot of sense to me. And now I'm in this environment. It's the same thing. I find niches where there is something that I can change, grow, transform, and build better. And that's really where I've kind of come out in my life. It's build better. And whatever context that is in, it doesn't really matter what sector, what function. If you have that mindset, I think you can operate in a lot of places.
Wholeheartedly agree. Very important transferable skill, that mindset. You mentioned there about your startup journey, and in transitioning into the sort of life post corporation. You obviously had a decision ahead of you as to whether you'd go and do that again, but you chose the world of acquisition entrepreneurship. What specifically about it attracted you to make that leap?
I think there are two things. I knew, having done it first time round, how exhausting a startup was. And I didn't think I necessarily had that energy at this phase in my life when my kids are teenagers and I'm also an active rower. So I'm juggling quite a busy life. The second was actually an ex-colleague of ours had bought a very boring business in his 20s. And I'd always been intrigued by that because it had never occurred to me as something that you could do. And so as I was thinking about the world, I thought, well, rather than start up a business, maybe I'll buy a business and run that. It would also satisfy a degree of, I'd been very senior in big corporations, but I'd never got to make the decisions and run things. And as I knew more about myself, I knew that that's where I wanted to get to. And the speed of me getting there was becoming a bit slow because of the economic conditions. So I thought, well, I'll leapfrog. I did a course at the Harbour Club, and as I was doing that, I kind of realized that buying a business was buying yourself a job, but potentially buying a few businesses was finding a new path into that control and ownership that was really what I was after. So, become the shareholder, not the employee, basically.
What a beautiful soundbite and a great epiphany, actually. And yes, I'm really glad that you came to that pass. And yes, is it playing out the way you intended in that sense?
Yes. To some extent, I had bought myself a job with one of the companies because although it had an MD, the MD left, and I'm acting MD part-time with somebody else at the moment. So I'm a little bit more involved than I had intended to. However, I'm still being involved with the other companies, and I'm still seeking other companies to join the group. So I'm quite quickly trying to transition myself out of that and get somebody else to take that role.
Yep, understood. We'll double click on that a little bit later, if that's all right. Because I'd be keen to get the picture of the reality post deal in those situations. Not uncommon for the MD to go. Indeed, that may have even been part of the deal. So the Indie Ops Group, which I love the strapline, a mission, brilliant alone, louder together. Is that right?
Yes.
I love that.
Hours of spending time on ChatGPT, getting the right sounding board and right ideas out.
It's a real enabler, isn't it? Yeah. But no doubt your creativity, brought that into the world. So tell us a little bit about the approach, how it might differ from a typical roll-up.
Yeah. So look, marketing and agency world is filled with people who, are quite creative, tend to be quite neurodiverse as well, and often have started up because there are 26,000 independent agencies in the UK, and most of those have been started up by people who
20,000.
26,000. It's a huge number. And remember, a lot of these are very small, single man people because they didn't want to do the job in a corporate. Either it wasn't giving them the flexibility they wanted, they didn't agree with the environment, and often because actually that corporate environment doesn't suit that type of personality. So, and it's also low entry. You don't need a lot of capital to start up an agency. You need people, and people can be freelance. You can, there's all sorts of clever ways you can move that stuff around. So 26,000. And when you talk to them, they are passionate. They really want to do a great job. They have very distinctive ways of doing things. They've come up as an expert in their field, be that creative director, be that account manager, whatever it is. And they have set up and varying degrees of success along that lines. Pushing them into a big corporate doesn't then work. So, if you think about the exit strategy, a lot of the people who would be buying this is like an Accenture, years ago started buying 60 agencies, I think, or another big agency like a WPP or a Publicis. That is I've observed that, and I've seen people sell their businesses there, and within 3 years, the directors have gone because, part of the deal. The employees have often gone because that work culture and how things happened and how things were successful has gone. And often the clients have gone as well because what the clients liked was that culture, and that's gone. So my thought was, how do you preserve that independent culture, independent nature, but add value through the group? And so the one thing that I look for, or the one thing, They have to be really great at what they do. There has to be potential for more headroom in terms of organic growth. They also have to be natural collaborators. And I've turned down really lucrative businesses because when it came down to it, it was all about, well, what do I get? How does this work for me? Rather than seeing the potential of, if I do this stuff with these people, gosh, look what it can do for me, as well as what it can do for everyone else. And so that collaboration has to be part of, what this group is about.
Yeah, very strong differentiator, I think, and also a nice filter on which to select your deal flow.
Yeah. And look, sometimes the owner's going to leave anyway. However, that culture pervades, and you've always got a period where you're going to have to be working with that person, and that success is going to be, defined a lot of it by that first period.
Yeah, very true, and difficult to know that intimately during the kind of initial kind of getting to know and due diligence stage. You only really find that out wholly after the deal is done, often. Yeah. So just double clicking back on that 26,000 UK creative agency companies, there must be a very broad base to that pyramid. Like there's got to be lots and lots of lifestyle businesses. The sort of the pinnacle, the apex of that pyramid must be quite small in terms of companies that really grow to a scale or have the capacity to grow to a scale. How do you filter on that?
There are lots of glass ceilings. So the trick for me is being able to understand what those ceilings are and whether I think I can help break through them. So some of them are obvious, and it's in every business, right? It's you walk in and it's a good team, but it's just the owner and people doing jobs. There's no leadership team, right? That I can fix easily. If the quality of the work's good and the people are good, I can create leadership teams. And I
would help. Or
often, yeah. The two I'm working with, one certainly has it, and they've been developing it for 6 to 12 months, and they are, you look back at where they were a year ago, and they are now in the majority running that business for me. The other ones are just on that journey. There are a couple of people in there who have potential, and yes, a couple who might not, but you start off on that journey and then you add in as you need to. But yeah, creating leadership teams, creating processes that allow delegation of outcomes, not tasks, that allow teams to be able to have a vision and a plan and communicate that so that people can work against that rather than, oh, well, you told me to do X, so they understand the context, the objectives, what are the priorities, and then communicate. The communication people, the winning the hearts and minds of the broader organization and bringing them along. All of those things really easy to do if you get the buy-in from the owner, or if you are the owner. Then other areas which are just as I say, the capacity for further growth. So that's a little bit harder to judge, and a little bit of that is my business and past expertise, but looking at what fundamentally is their proposition. How does that compete in the market, and do they have headroom? So for example, if they're playing at the lower end of the market, i.e. execution end, that's going to get eaten, unless they are at the forefront of improving that process. So, one of the businesses I'm involved in is actively developing AI products so that, they will be at the forefront rather than being the people who become obsolete. Another, where they are, it really involves strategic thinking and applying that strategic thinking and specialized knowledge in an environment which AI doesn't get into very easily. So, finding those businesses, and often it's also clients, looking at what their client roster looks like and thinking, well, okay, these are reasonable clients that, understand what they're doing. And if I take that as a testament to the quality of the work, then I think I can go and get other clients for them.
Yeah, that's got to be a key thing to look for, I guess, is that quality of the client book. Who's got long-term, high-value, repeatable clients. That's 9/10 of the value of the business, I would imagine, in a creative agency. Although, to your earlier point about it being people-based and relationship-based, and you got to be careful not to lose those clients when the founders of the agencies inevitably want to pass on the baton. Yeah, really, really difficult sort of set of plates to keep spinning, I would imagine.
Yeah, and that's why the leadership team becomes key, because if it's all based on the owners and the owners and those direct relationships, it's never going to work, because they go and eventually it's going to drift off. So really getting that leadership team to start taking not just the relationships but the quality and the consistency of the work across is key.
Yeah, totally get that. Can we just talk a little bit about deal structuring?
Yeah.
Because you invoked Mr. Sorrell there when you mentioned WPP a little earlier, and what Martin Sorrell did very well was deal structuring with equity swaps and earnouts with upside, and he did a great job capital efficiently of building a group, scaling a group very quickly with WPP. So obviously great case study, but have you taken a similar approach, and if so, what's been the kind of unlock on the trust side with the founders in getting them to buy into those sort of deal structures?
So the trust side has mostly been relationship, right? So and for me, relationship starts with transparency. So I'm not the sort of person that's a natural, salesperson trying to hustle. You pretty much get what you see with me. I'm very direct in my language, my approach, but so there's a degree of transparency, and they tend to trust me on that. The second is, obviously I have a reasonable pedigree in terms of my marketing background, and because I have mixed that up with small business and startup, and I've also built businesses within the large company. So I built a business from scratch in P&G. I have a level of understanding and empathy of what they're going through, but also the lessons that I've been able to learn, I can bring into their environment. And I've done that even before I've done deals with them. So I've given them advice, and sometimes they started working on that advice, seen that it's working, and then they decide to get into bed with me, as it were. So there's a lot of that in terms of building the trust. In terms of the deal structure, I'm still learning as I go. I think is to say, I, from a financial point of view, said up front and agreed with my husband there'd be no debt and there'd be no personal guarantees. So
those are some good lines to have, by the way. I mean, that's a nice starting point.
Yeah, it was he's very risk averse and I'm very risk forward, and so we balance each other out quite well. But we, so my first deal was a WIBO, so work in buyout. I agreed that based on performance and if I got them to a certain valuation, we'd then get the equity. And I did that as a joint venture with somebody who was more experienced than me, and that gave me the confidence to go and have some of those conversations. The second deal was from my Rolodex. So after I did this course, I opened up my phone book and I called somebody who I knew had bought an agency themselves. And it so happened they were in the process of selling it. Now, they had put it through a broker, and I wasn't, necessarily the person that they wanted to sell it to, because they wanted cash up front and they wanted this, that, and the other. But over the course of 9 months, I just kept in touch. I looked at the numbers. We had some meetings. I asked more questions. And I convinced them that I could help them grow their business. So it had been at a bit of a high. It had declined a little bit, and they wanted to get it back to the glory days. The 3 owners had all gone through quite a lot of personal trauma and just wanted to get on with their lives and not have to have the extra worry of the business. They'd hired in an MD who wasn't working out. And they'd had 2 previous offers, one which they walked away from just after COVID, which was a nice offer. And that was the number in their head as a result. And they'd had another offer in that 9 months. But when the Trump tariffs landed, that company, who was a French company, walked away. And they walked away because, it was an uncertain environment. The clients were holding on to their budget, so the revenue was going down. But, I knew them and I saw potential. So they wanted me. By the time we'd gone through that 9-month process, they really wanted me to run the business.
Well, you've been the point of consistency for all that turbulence, I think.
Yeah. And I think also talking more about growth and about money at that point as well. So really looking at, how the business could fare. A couple of times they put money on the table and they said, couldn't you get a loan and put some money up front and we could do this? And I was like, no, look, I'm not a money up front person. If you want to do that deal, go somewhere else. And they eventually just accepted it. And we've done a deal which, from a structure point of view, let me say it's quite unusual, because in order to structure it, we have kept them on as employees and consultants over a 3-year period. We are giving them, because ultimately what they wanted was an income, but without having to worry about it. And yes, they'd like a lump sum. So for 3 years, they get an income without having to worry about it. For me, that means it's above the capital gains tax line. So it's a little bit more cost effective. There's a convertible loan note, which I pay interest on. Again, that's above capital gains tax. And then there's the convertible loan itself matures in 3 years' time. And I'll either at that point have paid them off through profits, or anything left over I could get debt. But at that point, I'll be a lot more confident and it'll be the company that's getting the debt without PGs. So, and if I don't pay them off, it converts back to shares and they've got that problem again.
I mean, that's actually a beautiful structure.
It worked. It worked really well.
Now the downside risk for both sides, though.
Yeah. It's my time, my effort. They're earning, guaranteed money, which they, let's face it, they weren't before because it was always dividends. And so, yeah, it's a nice little annuity for them.
And they get you in there helping them drive growth and think outside the box and break through that glass ceiling that you mentioned earlier. And so,
and I get them as active consultants as well, and they've been very good. One's a little bit more hands-on, but as I said, there's no MD, and they're based up in Newcastle, and I'm in Buckinghamshire, so it's quite handy having somebody hands-on. But once we get through the first 12 months. Slowly, each of them are, dropping away a little bit more and a little bit more. One's already pretty much out of the business and mainly acting as board advisor. One's a graphic designer and only working on specific projects, and the other one's, probably will take a little bit longer to drop out.
Yeah, understood. And this is by design, the transition of these founders out of the business.
Yeah, and also particularly because, look, you've got really big name clients. These are big international FMCG companies. You don't want to spook them.
No, it's got to be phased. And nice to know that the founders aren't immediately, off into the wind, that they recognize the need for that smoothness of transition.
Yeah, and I've left them with 12% equity, so 3% each, so that if and when I sell, they will get an upside. And so they're also invested in developing that and helping me develop the group, actively sort of suggesting companies or contacts that I might want to get in touch with.
Great. Oh, so you've done a fabulous job of having them sort of in the strategy of the overall kind of group build out, which is also quite difficult to achieve. Just on that, because of this, post integration or post merger integration type of challenge with agencies, because you don't want to change their je ne sais quoi, their essence, but similarly you want to get some economies out of some sort of standardization. How do you move beyond sort of just ownership and into the teamness of these people joining something that's bigger than just their own silo? How do you make sure they operate as a team rather than separate entities?
So I'll tell you when I've done it before. I think it's partly the answer. However, so the two companies, one is a Weibo, one I own 88%. One's based in Harrogate, one's based in Newcastle. I have seen that there are similarities between the two. Now, on the scale of it, you go, well, one's in FMCG, shopper marketing, the other one's in automotive. There's nothing, but they have the same challenges. You know, they have owners who, frankly, need to delegate more. You know, they have growing businesses that they need to work out how to scale. They have finance challenges, or, you know, finance people, or not people, but they need some. They have creative teams, so graphic designers, design versus artwork, etc., etc. And so actually there are a few areas, and by the way, neither of them are very good at marketing themselves. So they all had to share some similar challenges. We've gone in and made certain working groups. So marketing, I got one of their guys, one of our guys, to look at and map out what would marketing look like. I've created content generator GPTs for them with my marketing understanding, so that each of them have a similar model, and then we're automating that into their lead generation at the back end. So a little working group, similar structure, you know, but working so that they're not doing it alone. There's a little bit of accountability. There's a little bit of oh, look what I've done. I got the leadership teams together for a day, and the owners together, to talk through their journeys, their frustrations, and share back very openly, you know, which was quite eye-opening, but also created that sense of we're in it together. You know, we're not taking them over, they're not taking us over, but there are resources there. So we have an HR person, and they don't. And so when they are upgrading their contracts, which they're in the process of doing to change a few things, they're sending it over to our guys to have a look at and get the expert opinion.
Nice.
Or a second opinion.
Yeah.
We have a finance director and a bookkeeper. They just have a bookkeeper. I'm looking at some of the way they manage their cash flow and saying, I think my finance director needs to have a look at how you're doing some of these things. So we're starting that process of being helpful to each other without me mandating anything. And that sense of team is already working.
Has it validated for you this you know, louder together piece, this because you've started this with an assumption that actually these people want to be part of something bigger and collaborate, but has this kind of the sort of team workshop, you know, openness, putting them together in the room, having them cross-pollinate, has that validated that original thesis?
Yeah, and I've spoken to them, and, you know, I'm a big feedback person, so, you know, I've asked them all, and it did both ways. You know, for my Decide lot, who were just a little bit further, they
that's the Newcastle operator.
Yeah, they're the Newcastle lot, and they kind of went, gosh, we kind of didn't realize how far we'd come, because when we were talking to them, we recognized where we were, you know, under a year ago, 9 months ago. With the other guys, they realized that also that, you know, the problems that they were having in terms of trying to do their job and trying to be a leadership team, which they'd never done before, having tensions between themselves and the owner. They're like, oh, well, we're not the only ones who've done this, and we can see other people who have been through this and done it. And so, yeah, I think it really has, they've come away feeling like they're part of something bigger without being taken over. There is still some communication to be done, and I think less with the leadership teams and more with the rest of the teams, because, you know, there are rumors when they see, you know, the two coming together saying, are we being bought by, is Tonia buying us? What's happening? And I was like, no, this is just us working together and collaborating. You're still the whole caboodle, you know, but this is a way of helping you grow faster.
And that's the Harrogate one, the whole caboodle.
Yeah.
So, Roger Hargreaves.
Yes.
Tell me the story.
Well, so the group was originally the Lonsdale Hands group, and Lonsdale Hands was a quite a well-known creative and designer. And they, in their team, they did a buyout, and the copywriter was Roger Hargreaves. Now, he was the copywriter. He was known as the copywriter because he was really shit at design work because he couldn't draw, which is why he was known for, when he was explaining stuff, he would draw these little figures a little bit. And that's where all of that came up from. So
little Miss and Mr. Men.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
very much of the squiggly line kind of origin.
Exactly. And so the group actually, the opposite of what we're doing, the group divested and they sold off the UK business. They had a London office and a Newcastle office, and eventually they sold the London office and they really focused in on Newcastle as their base.
And that became the side in the end.
Yeah, so it went through various, it was Lonsdale Hands, then it became the Design Group, which was a great name, actually.
Yeah.
But they changed it to Decide back in 2015, I think, or 2014, somewhere like that.
Nice. What a great origin story. Absolutely love that.
It is, and they do nothing with it, and it's going to be part of my marketing plan at some point when I find somebody other than me to do the marketing.
Yeah, quite. Well, I mean, look, acknowledging that past, that journey, I think it just shows the longevity of how they've been serving customers over time, and it always evoke it.
They shared this wonderful 20-minute video that's on YouTube, which is, in typical clipped, very English, and here we have, and they had all of these, what looked like computers at the time, were just beads on and you'd make the beads longer or shorter depending on where the project was. So it was a way of visualizing project progress.
Oh my goodness.
And they had,
Scott.
Yeah, exactly. And then they had, like a light box, so that when they designed packaging, they'd put the packaging into the light box and they'd be able to change the lighting depending on what retail environment it was. So, Tesco might have different lighting to Asda nowadays, and they'd look at this in this light box to make sure that their design showed up well on shelf. So it was very cool to watch.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I have to have a look at some point. So you've spoken to a lot of small and mid-sized agency owners.
Yeah.
And I should imagine the deal flow has been quite a large funnel to get to the sort of ones that you've got over the line. How have you observed any change in the owner's mindset towards how they think about succession and divestment opportunities now?
I think there's more awareness now. And I've even seen that in the last 12 months. There's been a lot of activity from people like us, right? So owners are having a lot of conversations and they're open to explore. And so A, as somebody doing that, it's harder to cut through. But B, they have choice. Now, they think they have choice, right? We all know that with small businesses, the choices are fairly limited in terms of people financing these things.
Regrettably.
But they are thinking it through more, and they are starting to plan. They tend to plan 2 to 3 years out, and they'll be happy to jump earlier if the deal's right. But I tend to have 2 conversations, one of which is that, as in I'm planning to leave, and the second of which is I'm trying to scale. And those tend to be businesses turning over somewhere around either side of the 1 million, and they're wanting to get to that next phase. And those are also interesting, but more interesting in terms of bolt-ons, or if I think that by collaborating, we can really accelerate that client list for them.
Yeah. Are you having to massively differentiate yourself from these emerging other kind of acquirers and emerging groups? If so, how? From a seller's mindset perspective.
Yeah. So our positioning is trying to differentiate. So for me, the thought is, yes, I could just pull together a bunch of arbitrary marketing companies and put a lid on them and roll up the numbers and it would look good. Maybe I'd, give them all the same financial reporting system and HR policies, and then it's a group. I think that if you understand what your buyers are after, as in who's going to buy this from me eventually, I think they want more than that. And that's where I'm really leaning into the collaboration piece. So trying to get a functioning group of people who see this as a group that they are part of and they are benefiting from, rather than just a roll-up.
But also preserving their identity in the process, which is not easy to be able to kind of, convey that you're going to be able to get economies, you're going to be able to focus on scaling, but at the same time, we're going to keep your units. We're going to keep what's defined your agency.
Yeah, and that's why having a common vision helps, but a common vision that celebrates that. So the brilliant alone, louder together is that rallying cry. And it's about being the best at what you do and wanting to go better, but also working out that, if you were a brilliant soloist guitarist, doing it on your own probably isn't going to sell you many records, but doing it as part of a band and, being in the Who is. So, it's that kind of feeling. You can see my ex-music background coming.
Yeah, I love the analogy.
The analogies.
So, biggest challenge so far in putting this group together? What would you say that had to be?
The speed and consistency at which you get the owners to buy into the changes. So where you own it, like I've taken over Decide, it's easier because ostensibly, I'm the owner, but I still have to get the hearts and minds of the shareholders who are still, and the ex-owners, they're still shareholders who are still in there. With the WIBO, that's been harder because I know what needs to be done, but he will, stuff like this happens, right? And that stuff is very much life, So in the last 9 months, we've had 3 major illnesses and personal crises that have taken key people out of the business and have thrown the organization emotionally and other things. So one guy had a brain hemorrhage. Another guy's had bladder cancer. We've had people who have had other personal issues. And it's just those things throw the rhythm, right? Or some opportunity comes in, which is a really good opportunity, and it slightly pivots the organization's focus. And then they're taking the eye off the ball of some of the other things. So that consistency, if it was just me doing it and being able to sort of mandate, okay, guys, we need to do this. This is we're putting in the leadership team meetings. We're putting in the these KPIs. We're adjusting how we look at the financials. We're teaching these guys about cash flow. I started talking a lot of that in April, and some of it's only just happening now in September because life got in the way.
Yeah, events.
And now they're tripping over themselves because they're so busy because their business is taking off, but they don't have some of these fail safes in place properly yet. So I think that for me is the hardest thing. Yeah.
Yep. We like to think that we can gradually introduce necessary change, but sometimes it all happens in bursts, doesn't it? For whatever.
It does. Yeah. And availability and holidays and stuff like that.
Well, the year is very condensed in reality, isn't it? You get sort of 2 quarters of go gung ho productivity that I find. So let's talk about your framework then, if you don't mind. You've got almost like a sequential talking about the fit, the capital, transformation, accountability. Please, describe it for us if you don't mind, and tell us, which of those steps has been the biggest sort of lift.
Yeah. So I think the we talk about it in terms of growth, right? So it's getting the right fit. So making sure, and we've talked this in terms of, are they great? Are they the right size that you're looking for, and do they have that collaboration? But getting the right fit up front and making sure that they're right for the group, and you're ready to walk away if you need to. You're then in terms of you agree that deal. The first thing you're going to have to do in that agreement is in some way restructure capital. So, i.e., how do you pay for it? And I'm talking that about restructuring capital because for me, generally, I'm not going and getting outside investors, or I don't have a pot of money that I'm doing it. But it can involve that as well. So, we model out the various deal options. We look at it in terms of how it meets what the owners are after, and how what the owners are after sometimes changes to your advantage, as I talked about with these guys. So making sure that all of that fits and is legal as well. So, I've had to get HMRC sign off to the deal structure that we've just done with Decide, which fortunately they agreed. And then once you're in, you have that initial period, which is great. I've done this deal. Now what? And that for me is a little bit of business as usual, because it's what I've done in all my past work. But you essentially go in and observe and orient. And that's typically around 3 months. If you know the business well, you can do it more quickly, but you're reviewing the details of the P&L, the client mix, the pipeline, try and talking to all of the key people at least, and ideally all of the people in the company, to get an assessment of the culture, what's working, what's not. And then very quickly for me, turning that into a strategy and a plan, and developing that out and giving the various team members ownership over that plan and making them accountable for the outcomes. You then have the W. So we've gone the get alignment, get the right fit, restructure the capital, observe and orient. And then it's about winning hearts and minds. And the winning hearts and minds piece is, it's all very well and good having your own plan, but unless the people who are going to be executing that plan really believe in it, it's worth nothing. And so communicating about who you are, what you're doing there, what your vision is, what's your story, what's the plan, and doing that through regular sessions, all hands town hall sessions, embedding it in your leadership and your meeting rhythm, making sure that your KPIs are all linked up to that plan, and that you're communicating progress on a regular rhythm becomes part of that winning hearts and minds, and also continuing to listen. So I had one recently where I stood up and very happily said, oh, we're going to essentially double the business in 5 years. And this one guy was panicked, and he has a history of health problems, and he was worried about getting overworked. And so, just being able to listen to that, take it on board, and, reassure him that, that it also meant that we were going to increase the staffing. And if there were any issues, he needed to start, talking to us and letting us know, so that we could help avoid that, because that wasn't part of our culture. We weren't going to be pushing people until they broke. So then you get into T, which is transforming systems. So, once you've got the hearts and minds, you get in there and you do what you need to do. If you've got to standardize finance, if you've got to implement any CRMs, ERPs, anything like that. Key is also implementing SOPs, so operating practices, so that particularly, from a sale point of view, they're all that governance is documented, setting up group reporting as well, so that as part of the group, it all comes up at a similar level. And then the final bit is obviously holding yourself accountable and holding them accountable, so that you can harvest the value. So it's the H in growth. And that's, we talked about it a little bit, but tracking the monthly KPIs, reviewing them quarterly, making sure you have board meetings, leadership reviews, identifying optimization or divestment opportunities as you go, and really getting that collaborative environment for those conversations. But yes, a lot of blurb, but it's basically growth. So
well, it's a playbook, and it's a nice mnemonic for a playbook that takes you from let's make sure we got the right people, the right deal structure and the right people in the deal, right the way through to how do we scale this thing, and how do we all own that scaling of the business, that future success. It's really nice. Is that your work in putting that together, or
again, yes, me and ChatGPT spending a few hours together.
love it? Yeah, it's the sort of thing that people can get behind, in a kind of traction EOS-y kind of way. I like it. So armed with that, one piece of wisdom for anyone considering buying or rolling up some small businesses, maybe in the agency space, maybe not. But if someone's coming at this without a finance background, and with operational experience, what's your one nugget of wisdom that they should sort of hold in mind?
Well, the nugget that I'm giving myself now is I think you can start off by yourself, as in or with a partner, but I think find the right partner. I over the last year have realized that I need a more strategic finance person. I think I've found that person. We will see, but I'm quite excited that if it comes on, we'll see.
Yeah, great. So the unstoppable team of a strong CEO and a highly competent, innovative CFO. The Thelma to your Louise, or whichever you wish to do.
Yeah, look, I learned to read a P&L. I own the P&L, but balance sheet and M&A finance gets very complex quite quickly. And so whilst I can understand it, it's not my natural comfort zone. And so, yeah, I need to partner.
I mean, that's hugely common. Those two different skill sets, you don't find them really in one individual. So important to have that partnership, I think, and great result in finding someone that you can lean on there. So we like to be forward looking in the M&A Zing, and always ask our guests to think about what the next 12 months might look like. You touched on AI and the transformational impact of AI on marketing a little while ago, and I know that with the whole caboodle, you've already brought to bear a phenomenal new product here that very much based in the AI tools that exist today. I'd love to hear a bit more about that, or I'm sure our listeners would. But how do you see that and other things influencing the next 12 months for the group?
Yeah, I think that's a really good example of, identifying a problem and finding a solution. So these guys have been known in their industry for leading with AI, and they've been doing that in terms of digitizing the back end, the sales, the marketing, automating websites so that they're personalized, etc. And one of their clients, or one of the people using that back end, came to them with an idea, and they said, look, 30% of our cars in our dealership don't have photos on the website. And that's a real problem for us. And it takes a lot of time to get the car cleaned up, wait for it ding, take a photo. And even when you do, the photo's got the reflection of the person with a camera in it. And, the lighting's a bit shit. And by the way, we're in an industrial estate and it's not a very nice surrounding. So they have they've created a new company that, the whole caboodle owns a part of, that uses AI to generate images of the car down to the finest detail of what's the right interior, what's the, so they just put in the reg number and it brings it all up, and puts it in a wonderful background. They'll even do nice sales videos at the touch of a button. They have developed that together. They have been pre-selling it. It is going amazing guns. And I think, that's a real rocket. So, and what does that mean for the rest of marketing? And, one of the things I got when the leadership teams got together was them to run through all of their capabilities and try to get that stimulating back in to decide about what could we be doing. We produce a lot of e-content, for example. So we do pack designs, we do campaign ideas, but then you have to iterate that across different forms of e-content. And, that can all probably be AI'd, or, a lot of it can. And so, just thinking about how do we improve the productivity of our own systems, but also, are there other offerings that we could make in order to drive more awareness or promotions or competitions or something in the FMCG world? So I think everyone needs to start looking at what other people are doing in your own industry, outside of the industry, and think about how would I apply those sorts of tools in my industry? What could that make better? And then find a partner who can make it happen. Because that's the key. Is a lot of us think, oh yeah, we can do this, but not necessarily right now, as it were.
Yeah, but the way that the speed at which things are moving, if you don't do it now, you'll get left behind, right? So, but I would definitely say the explainer videos for the car dealerships that the whole caboodle has come up with is incredible, an absolute massive game changer for car dealerships that face that very big administrative problem that you make go away with this new product. So yeah, very exciting, and speaks to what could be done in other industries as well with AI generated video walkthroughs, etc. That are so tangibly real. It's incredible. Good. And how big would you like the group to be this time next year?
Sustainable growth versus exponential growth. I have my eye on 2 significant acquisitions now, which if I could complete those in the first 6 months, I'd be very happy. That would put us at 4 and our revenues at around about 16 million. If I could get it up to 20 million by the end of the year, I'd be even happier. And then we'll see for year 3. The ideal target is getting our EBIT to about 10 million. We'll see what happens with that.
Yeah, that is a huge unlock when you reach that milestone. World's your oyster there. Lots of compounding opportunities to be had. Great. Well, so if an independent, retirement-focused agency owner who is looking at their options wishes to reach out and talk to you guys there at Indie Rocks, or if an acquisition entrepreneur wants to learn from your very tangible, valuable experience, how can people reach you?
I'm on LinkedIn. I'm Tonia Nagle. If you're I check my DMs very regularly, so that's probably the easiest way.
Nice. Well, make sure we include a link in the show notes if, with your permission. Tonia Nagle, it has been an absolute pleasure speaking with you, and what an inspiration you are to have achieved what you have with this acquisition entrepreneurship project so quickly. I know it might not seem that way, but to have got the 2 deals under your belt in very quick succession and to have them scaling at the rate that they are is no mean feat and highly laudable. So well done, and long may it continue. Looking forward to seeing the next couple join the group. Do keep us posted on your progress.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me. It's been lots of fun.
Oh, it's the fun has been entirely mine. But thank you for sharing your wisdom with us today. Listeners, tune in next time for some more great content and exciting conversations about the world of acquisition entrepreneurship. But for now, keep on crunching. Bye for now.